Andy Burnham, the Greater Manchester Mayor, has aspirations to be not only the leader of the Labour Party, which has failed several times, he has aspirations to be Prime Minister. We know about someone else who aspired to be Prime Minister, don't we? And we know what we did to him.
Do not fear them. Do not fear any of them. On the 20th of November 2003, James Ignatius O'Rourke McMahon was elected councillor for the Failsworth East ward of Oldham. Deeply ambitious, he ruthlessly rose to power, and by 2011 he was already leader of the council. In 2015, exploiting a Labour Party loophole, he became MP for Oldham West and Royton. If only the people of the town knew then what they now know. Do not fear them. Do not fear any of them.
A very good evening. It is Sunday, the 26th of June 2022. My name is Raja Mia. I am responsible for the Recusant 9 transmissions. The latest allegation is that I encourage terrorism and incite violence. It's to be added to the list of racist, far-right, misogynist. I don't know. I can't keep up. For those in the security services and who look after the social media content and handle complaints, let me once again be very clear. I encourage democracy. The only way in which I believe change is possible, and I endorse that change, is through the ballot box. And the word incite, I take offence to. I educate. I educate my townsfolk on how to mobilise themselves, use their democratic rights as citizens to hold those in power to account. So that is what I do, and that is what I've done from the beginning, which is why I'm still here. And if I had been supporting terrorism, as has been used to attempt to censor me, I think I'd have been arrested again. But no, it's just a ploy they can use. It's a shortcut they can use to try and censor me on certain social media channels. But here I still am. Here I still am. This was published on the 9th of March 2022, just before the elections. So this CSE review was delayed until after the elections. Now, some of you might agree with me and that it was a political ploy. Some of you may not. That's a matter of opinion. But I want to bring something up to speed with you to set the scene for where we go with this. As reason for delay, Mr. Burnham subsequently stated, and I'm quoting the local democracy reporter Charlotte Green's article here. There would be a short delay in the release of the report while people, including victims, plural, victims, were given more time to say everything they want to say. So he's claiming in March that the delay was to give victims more time to say everything they want to say. MALCOLM NEWSAM, the review author, said the following: "We must balance the need to get the report out as quickly as we can while ensuring that we have approached the review fairly and that no stone has been left unturned." No stone has been left unturned. Okay? So the mayor is very clear. He wanted victims, he wanted to make sure victims were given more time to say everything they wanted to say. No ambiguity, right? No ambiguity whatsoever. I'll let a few people join me before we get on. I need to be very clear with all of you this evening, please. We are to give nobody any excuse through which this transmission can be censored on YouTube. So please, whatever your comments are, restrain yourself. There is a time and a place, and that reckoning is coming. And again, so we're clear, that reckoning is through democratic legal means. So let me play this. You don't need to see my face. Early June, the police contacted you. I am joined by Child A in Newsam and Ridgway so-called assurance review. Child A contacted me on Messenger a couple of weeks ago, and, well, her story's horrific. I think I'll let her tell her story herself. Hi, thanks for being very, very, very brave and reaching out. I'm going to just refer to you as Child A throughout all of this, if that's okay with you.
Yeah, that's fine.
And I've sent you a few questions to look at, and if we can use those questions as a template for our discussion, and you be as comfortable and as free as you want to be. I will try and do as much listening as I can. So if I'm silent for long moments, it's not because I've turned off, it's because I'm listening intently. Is that okay?
Yep, that's fine.
Okay, so just so that we are clear, this interview runs for 35 minutes. The victim's voice has been altered, and I have evidence to prove, to substantiate who she is and all of those sorts of things. And in case anyone wants to come and knock on my door and arrest me, this testimony has already been shared with my lawyers and a whole host of other people who will release it into the public domain should I be in any way harmed. Here we go. If you can, will you share what originally happened to you that led to you featuring this report?
So it started in 2010 when I was having a conversation with someone over MSN, which then turned into like a relationship. I was told he was 50 and wasn't any wiser until weeks later when I'd met him and was made aware he was 19.
How old were you?
I was 14 at this point. At the time, I had a lot going on at home, in school, and it made me feel safe, you know. It gave me attention. It gave me what I thrived at. Well, I felt I thrived at the time. And it continued for several weeks until something had happened in school where I'd been forced to perform oral on a boy who attended the same school during the holidays. Unbeknown to me, a video was made and passed around. The police social services, who was already part of my case, aware of what was going on, was made aware of this. The boy being 15, maybe 16 at the time, and even with the video evidence, there was no follows up.
Sorry, I'm going to stop you just for clarity purposes. You used the term you were forced to give oral. Yes, so you're forced to perform oral sex on another boy, and that was recorded. Yes?
Yeah.
And that was in school?
No, so this was outside of school.
Okay, during school time, during the school day, journey to school, home, holidays, what?
6-week holidays.
Okay, in the summer holidays.
So the police was aware there wasn't a video. I couldn't tell you if they saw it, although access would be able to be gained as they knew the name of who possessed it and who was passing it around. Nothing was ever done. A conversation between myself and 2 officers where I was told there was damning evidence to support my claim of it being forceful, as because there was messages sent forward and backwards between me and this guy. Other than that, I never heard anything. I was just left to continue living, going to school every day with this, my attacker, with the perpetrator who'd violated me, you know, and I was made to be a liar, you know, and everyone made it clear that's what they thought.
And that was traumatic. That was traumatic. Yeah, that's what you're sharing with me. That was a traumatic experience. Yeah, and it knocked you for 6. That's what you're saying.
Yeah, because of this, it caused problems at home, and it led for me to run away. I was still in contact with this 19-year-old through all this, and it was him who I'd gone to, but was caught and returned home. This increased my belief that, you know, he was the only one there for me. You know, my family was angry because of what had happened, not at me, but the whole situation. And about a week later, I was convinced to walk out of school to meet this 19-year-old, promised a better life, to move away, be happy, you know, something that I think everyone dreams of, even being a little girl. So I walked out of school in the afternoon and went to Met. This is where I was then taken behind a mill, told that we had to wait till a certain time, and then raped before being sent home.
By the 19-year-old?
Yeah.
Wow. Okay. And can I ask you, so, you know, you're clearly a white young woman. What was a 19-year-old? Was he also a white young man?
No, he was Pakistani male.
Okay. So he lured you away on the pretense he was going to take you away to safety.
Yeah.
Raped you in a car and sent you back home.
Yeah, pretty much.
After he'd walked out from school in the afternoon.
Yeah, there was no reports of me leaving school, nothing.
So what did he do next?
I went home, dealt with it myself for a period of time before I attempted an overdose while social services were present. I disclosed what had happened to them, but told, because of the medication I had taken, that I'd need to speak to him, you know, once I'd been to hospital and that.
So you were distressed, you overdosed, social services were present, you disclosed to them what had happened, and they said you'd have to disclose again once you weren't in the condition you were in.
Yeah.
Wow.
So I was admitted into hospital, given a mental health work, placed into reflections, Bernardo's, Messenger, you name it, every agency I can think of.
So that's Project Messenger that's repeatedly criticised in the report. This is the award-winning CSC intervention project that now has been ridiculed. It's that one, Messenger, yes?
Yeah, they never, like, they were only, I used to go on meetings with them individually, and all they were ever bothered about was names, license plate numbers, never what had happened or, you know, ways of preventing this. They just they just wanted these names and, you know, to write them down to do nothing with, because nothing was ever followed up.
So you gave them names. You gave them names of the 19-year-old, I presume?
Yeah. Yeah.
By this point, I'm presuming you also had his phone number and stuff. You're in regular contact with. So they had the means of contacting this 19-year-old, yes?
Yeah, they were made aware of what they needed to follow up. But nothing, not to my knowledge, nothing was followed up. I weren't made aware of anything being followed up. I don't think it was ever really questioned after my disclosure to the social worker.
So you disclosed you were raped by a 19-year-old man, because that's what a 19-year-old is. I'm sorry. I know you were 13 or 14, but a 19-year-old in that context is a man. He lured you out of school. He raped you. He caused you to overdose. You disclosed that to social services. You disclosed all of the details to Project Messenger. And to the best of your knowledge, nothing ever came of it, and you don't even know if this man was arrested.
So that's correct, yeah. Nothing was done.
And the police, did you speak to the police at any point during this?
So the only dealings I had with the police was when I was reported missing. They used to pick me up and take me home, but they never... So the people I was with were always older, always Asian males. And, you know, they weren't interested in who they were. They were just interested in getting the car and come on.
I'm trying to put some pieces together, so please just bear with me. And I apologise. I understand this will cause you distress. So as a consequence of that first rape with the 19-year-old, you started more and more risk-taking behaviour. And you started hanging around more and more older Asian men. Where did you find these older Asian men? How did you come into contact with them?
So it was the time the social media used. I'd get them adding me and they'd speak to me and, you know, we'd arrange to meet. You know, it was nothing, well, I thought was nothing more than just friends. And then, you know, we'd meet a couple of times and then that's when, like, alcohol had been brought into it and, you know, the constant, oh, we'll bring someone else and introduce her to them. And then they'd manipulate, get me drunk, and then rape me. It was a vicious cycle where I still kept going back and I thought they were my friends.
And how many times, can I ask you, roughly?
This continued up until about 2018.
So how many years is that? 4?
Yeah.
And how many men?
I couldn't even contemplate the number.
And the police would regularly find you?
Yeah.
And just take you home and never say a word to the adults they were taking you away from?
Yeah, there was occasions when PNCs were taken of the boys, so they were made aware of the age and was aware of my age, but, you know, no questions were ever asked.
Okay. And then?
I was then moved to semi-independent living for a short. I lived there for a short period where I was manipulated and used not only by males but by females who I thought were friends. I was intimidated and forced to take Class A drugs, and it was just a downward spiral from there.
Who put you into semi-independent living?
So it originated from my aftercare work, and then through I used to have core meetings on a regular basis, and through all the agencies involved, they'd agreed that I was ready to move on to this semi-independent.
At 17?
Yeah, even though the risk was still high and they were aware of the risk outside and inside whilst I was there.
It says you were in a residential placement in this document in front of me. When were you in this residential placement?
2012 to 2.
Okay, so this was after the 19-year-old, yes?
Yep.
So after the 19-year-old, you're involved in risk-taking behaviour. You're going out and meeting these older Asian men.
Had the older Asian men visiting the property that I was living at as well.
Just let me go back. Just let me set the scene. So you've moved out. Relationship at home has broken down by this point, yes?
Yeah.
And you're put in a residential placement. And you were 14 years old.
No, I was 16 when I was put in
Okay,
residential.
you're put in a residential placement. You were 16 years old. And what happened?
So when I first moved in, the men that I'd been talking to and stuff started relieved. You had to have photo ID to access the premises. They knew and was aware of the age of these men and made the agencies involved of these men coming to visit. But it wasn't until about 2-3 weeks later where a visitor's ban was put in place and a curfew was placed on me.
So men came to visit you with their own IDs, and these were men who you'd known from when you were younger, some of them?
Yeah.
I'm listening to you.
I've lost trail of thought. I apologise.
No, so you don't have to apologise. You're in a residential placement, and there were men visiting you.
And then once the visitor ban was put in place, I was going out to visit these people. So I was being reported missing all the time. I was being picked up by police, you know, at ridiculous times in the morning in isolated places with grown men and just taken home, never questioned. You know, some of the vile wordings the police officers used to say, you know, as they were picking us up, and the way they treated me, it was like I wasn't the victim. I was causing it. I was looking for trouble.
You were making these men rape you.
That's the way they made me feel. They made me feel like, you know, they didn't believe me the first time, so my trust in them weren't there. And then the attitude and behaviour around what then continued to happen was as if it was just like trying to sign paperwork off, you know, not doing much, looking into the calls or, you know, trying to help.
You were the trouble causer. That's how they saw you.
Yeah, well, that's the way they made me feel. So going to the police, you know, after being not believed the first time with the evidence, you know, who's going to believe someone, you know, who's lied before?
So what happened next? I mean, you're in this residential place. You're in this home for 16 to what?
I've gone to the semi-independent at this point.
So you moved out of that into semi-independence.
Yeah.
Someone decided it was a good idea, despite you absconding at night, despite the police bringing you home, someone decided that putting you in a semi-independent home was a good idea.
Yeah.
Who was that?
Assuming everyone involved, because the core meeting was like a core meeting happened prior to me moving out, where it wasn't just the housing, it had to be accepted by my social work and other agencies that were involved. So I was in semi-independent for a short time. I'd been intimidated, persuaded to start taking harsher drugs than I was previously. So I started taking Class A. Got addicted very quick, which then led to me being easier to be manipulated to sell my body for money to feed my habit.
So they got you hooked?
Yeah. I moved again, where I was then used by a different group of boys who helped me off the Class A onto alcohol. So I was then being abused and exploited by this group. I think in my head, it was better than using Class A. Well, I felt at the time that they were helping me, you know. And then I moved from this semi-independent to another flat, and the police and every agency was aware of the drug and prostitution, and I got a visit of the aftercare worker about a month prior to my birthday to sign me off.
How old were you? Which birthday?
My 18th. So they signed me off, although aware of the dangers and the vulnerability of me still.
So they comprehensively failed you from year 9, 6 weeks holidays, when you were forced to perform oral sex on another boy, and that was recorded. And this spiraled from there all the way up to 18 so far, where aftercare comes along and signs you off their books. So where did you go from that? How have you got your life back together?
I didn't get my life back when I fell pregnant, and it gave me a reason to live. Prior to finding out I was pregnant, I had attempted to commit suicide again because of the ongoing abuse I was suffering. She was a lifeline. She was a second chance. And I honestly don't even want to think where I'd be without my child.
Yeah. I get that. I understand that completely. So you've got your life back together, right? You leave that behind the best you can. What happens next?
I've dealt with, well, I haven't. I've not dealt with what's gone on, but I've managed to push past and try and continue a normal life up until 2 weeks ago, when I was contacted by the police via a phone call.
This is important. So the police contacted you 2 weeks ago. So 2 weeks ago, give or take, is the 7th or 8th of June, yeah? So the early June, the police contacted you.
Yeah, the 7th of June it was. They asked to have a meeting, but was very vague about what it was to do with, as they wanted this meeting to be face-to-face. So I met them later at my property, where I was informed one of the women from the new messenger, it's got a new name now, but she come. They came and told me that the police had been composing this review for many years, and in the midst of them doing this, my case files had been presented where there were multiple failures from various agencies. They then told me that they had used my case files and mimicked them into a short anecdote which was going to be published in the review. During this meeting, my opinion was asked. What I was shown, what was going to be shown in the review. However, since seeing the review, a lot of it has been redacted.
So they put things, they showed you things 2 weeks ago that was going into the review, and those things have disappeared, and they've disappeared to one sentence in the review. 5.28, let me read it out to you. Child A was placed in a therapeutic residential placement. Consultant B noted that the plan was appropriate and some progress was made. What did they tell you they were going to put into it?
So I can't remember word for word, but it continued to say about the older men visiting the residential home, me having money, unexplainable, older men. And then they stated I was pregnant twice, which is false. And then right at the end, it said Child A was highly suspected of using Class A and prostitution. That's how they summed it up. Throughout the whole 2 paragraphs, which I was shown, no acceptance, no admission of, failure is in it. It's just stating facts out of my case file, but still portrays, a promiscuous girl who, even after the support they'd put in, I was still deteriorating. It still made me look out to be the bad one.
I think this is where your report on the detailed case studies is. It says confidential report on detailed case studies of 10 children, Appendix G. It says confidential appendices not for publication. So they've held that back. So they've used your case study of describing you, a child as a prostitute, is what you just shared with me.
Yeah.
To have that one sentence they've put in there. So it's very ambiguous. Child A was placed in a therapeutic residential placement. Consultant B noted that the plan was appropriate and some progress was being made. Wow. You're not describing any progress being made, are you? Whilst you're in a residential placement that you're absconding from all the time. So you get the messenger lady and someone else come along and say they're going to publish your stuff in this report. It's the first you've heard from them in
12 years.
12 years?
12 years, yeah.
It's the first you've heard from them in 12 years. They knock on your door. They left you a letter as well, didn't they? Have you got that letter to hand?
The letter isn't personally written to me. It's been printed out multiple times with our names written on the letterhead.
So it's not even personalised?
No. So the letter says, we are contacting you to let you know there has been a review into the Oldham Council and Greater Manchester Police dealt with sexual exploitation of children between 2006 and 2012. The findings of this review are going to be made available on the Greater Manchester Mayor's Office website soon, where it can be seen by members of the public and the media. We are writing to let you know that your name is not in the report, but it does talk about your experience, which you may find distressing. We know some police investigations carried out at the time were not good enough, and we are sorry for any harm you suffered. We are now going to work with Oldham Council to have another look at your case. If we think we can, we will investigate crimes that were committed against you and track down any possible offenders. Police officers would like to speak to you about what happened to you. You can choose when and where you talk to the police officers, and they will do all they can to support you. We know talking about what happened in the past may be upsetting. You do not have to do this if you do not want to. We want to do our very best to support you. The people delivering this letter will tell you how you can speak to a specialist detective and access help and support. Right at the end, it says, we know you are likely to have suffered hurt and harm and that this new investigation might be upsetting. We will do everything we can to support you through this difficult time. And it's signed by Chris Bowen, the Chief Superintendent.
So the Chief Superintendent had someone deliver you a generic letter with your name scrawled on top of it, yes?
Yeah.
You had no idea what they were coming for 12 years later. And this report, so you're aware, this report has been 2.5 years, 3 years in the making. They use you as a case study, but they never sought to come and interview you to see what you had to say to them face to face, to actually use real evidence from you rather than the reports they'd written about you. That's what you're getting at, isn't it?
Yeah. Also, during the meeting, there was questions about my well-being, which is something they didn't take the time to look into prior to the meeting. I suffer with really bad mental health, and the outcome from being relayed this news had affected it greatly, but no checks, nothing, was put in place prior to the meeting. They just obtained my information through health, I was told.
So they didn't even have your phone number. They went fishing for your phone number somewhere, which is unlawful, by the way.
The address.
So they went looking for your name and address to come and deliver this letter to you and then buggered off. That's what you're saying?
Yes.
What do you want to happen? How do you feel? Where do you want this to go?
I'm just angry at the moment, and, you know, it's massively affecting my life now. You know, there's many things that, you know, bring back memories, and it's put me back in the mindset of that 14 vulnerable little girl. I feel like I'm being exploited now by the agencies that were there to protect and help me, to try and, you know, justify the past.
You feel that the agencies have only contacted and are doing this to cover their own backs?
Yeah, there's been no consideration of my well-being. You know, I have a child. The dangers this review could potentially, you know, put me in if my name was to be found, or, you know, if charges are to be brought from my past case. There's nothing. There's no concern. There's nothing there. You know, they're offering a support worker to sit and talk over the phone to, but not actually facing the reality of what the effect this has done to me.
Wow. Andy Burnham, he's the one who commissioned this review. So they've not contacted you until June. You were clearly in this 6 months earlier. He said he was being considerate for victims because this sort of news coming out before Christmas causes harm and alarm. So he is very aware of what's going on. But he sat in that room before December, and you're telling me now you were never contacted until June this year?
No, nothing. I didn't hear anything, which leads me to believe that his statement is a lie. There was no consideration for the victims, as if there was 2 weeks prior notice wouldn't have been given. This isn't something you throw on someone's front doorstep and walk away. This is something that's affected not just my life, but all the other girls' life, and still continues to affect it. And there's been no compassion or nothing from anyone involved who I've come across up to yet.
The people who listen to me don't really understand. They're angry, and they have nothing for love for young women like you, but they don't understand how it happened. What happened?
It's difficult to answer, really, because at the time I weren't aware of it, and then to look back and try and find the answers, it's difficult for myself. I can't explain how it happened or why it happened to me. It was just a case of I got myself, well, not myself, but I was in a situation that I couldn't get out of, and I didn't have the agencies there to help and support me out of this.
And when you were out and about, were you on your own? Were you the only girl there, or were there other girls, or were there other teenage girls there as well in these places?
Yeah, there was. It differed depending on who I was with, but yeah, there could be other girls who was present, but it was quite often where they wouldn't bring other girls. They kept us away from each other. They kept us segregated, so that when we did eventually meet and was like, we were, putting pieces together.
So it was planned. What they did was planned, and you were part of a network. You're describing something to me where you were trapped. You're a child who's trapped. Will you talk to the police?
I don't feel that talking to the police will progress anything. I just feel it's going to drag up memories and potentially put myself in danger. You know, these abusers might have done it to many girls, but, you know, if they were to figure out my identity, I don't feel the police are able to protect me and keep me safe.
And you've got a child. You're now no longer just thinking for yourself, are you?
No, it's, I'm a single mom, literally living in the middle of it still.
When I first spoke to you, I said this is what the Maggie Oliver Foundation was specifically set up for. Have you managed to contact them?
So I have messaged her when I first found out about the review and my files being used, and I've recently messaged her since the review, but have not heard anything.
I'll call them in the morning. So the first thing I'll do tomorrow is I will call them and ask them. Did you email them?
Messaged them, the foundation Facebook page.
Okay, I'll contact them for you. And you contacted me because you want me to share this, don't you? This isn't me nudging you or I've not come and found you. You've sought me out and you want this story shared.
Yeah.
And what do you hope will come as a consequence of me sharing this?
I'd like the police to admit the failings, but even if not, to realise and put in place better procedures to safeguard, you know, these young girls who could potentially be at risk. They're focusing a lot on what happened, but what's about what's still happening in Oldham?
Do you feel young women are still at risk in Oldham? What happened to you? Do you feel that's still happening in Oldham?
Yes, greatly. You know, younger girls, older boys, you know, it's people don't even look twice nowadays, and I just feel that the police need to focus on. I can't get my teenager life back. I never had a normal teenager, but these girls can, and it can be prevented. And I just feel the police need to, you know, take a step back and realise that trying to cover up their failings from the past could potentially be harming the future or the present cases that they're dealing with now.
I think you're a very brave young woman. You've got my phone number, you know where I am, and thank you for your time.
If it wasn't for me having a friend who was aware of you and your work and Maggie Oliver, I probably wouldn't have done nothing. Because when you need help, go to the police. And who can you go to when the police ain't an option?
You need to do one thing for me, if that's okay. For yourself, more than for me. What they've written about you and used about you is not in the public domain, but they've shared it with other people because it's a confidential appendix. So you need to get in touch with them and say you want a copy of that because you're entitled to a copy of what they've used.
Yeah.
I mean, I'll message you exactly what to say. You get yourself a copy of that because, you know, it's not right. Thanks for your time. You know where I am. And if you ever want a cup of tea or anything, just give me a call. You're a brave young woman. You're an extremely brave young woman. And I'm deeply sorry. I'm sorry for what's happened to you. It's wrong. It's just wrong. And the way the authorities failed you is just horrific. When you're a child, it's the duty of adults, particularly who work in those services, to take care of you and treat you as a child, not to treat you how you were treated. It's just wrong.
Yeah.
Thank you. You get on with your evening. Thank you very, very much.
All right.
Thank you. Take care. Bye-bye.
Thank you. Bye.
My name is Raja Mir. This is a Recusant 9 transmission. They mock us. They call us racists and far right, now terrorists, misogynists. Andy Burnham, this victim, this young woman, by the way, you could hear the sound in the background. That was her baby, her child. She was cradling and crying while she did this interview. So if it sounds like bits have cut and stuff, it's, you know, that's what was going on. Andy Burnham, the Greater Manchester Mayor, led us to believe that his review team were taking testimonies from victims. The truth is now out. They did not take any testimonies from victims. The one testimony they took was of Sophie, and that's because Maggie Oliver circumnavigated the council and police gatekeepers who were responsible for identifying victims and witnesses and passing them on to the review team. Maggie Oliver has confirmed Sophie was blocked. This young lady didn't even have the opportunity. Her testimony is actually more harrowing because while Sophie was gang raped and abused by a grooming gang, she wasn't groomed in this traditional way. This child A was groomed and gang raped. And Andy Burnham misled you, misled her, misled all of us into believing that he and his review team were taking the testimonies of victims. And this man wants to be Prime Minister of our country. Andy Burnham, you want to be Prime Minister of our country, and this child, this is what you do to one of our children. You absolutely disgust me. And as for the other politicians and those in the council chamber tomorrow who want to move on, do you think this child can move on? How many of our children were groomed and gang raped? That report doesn't even make any number. It doesn't make any reference to how many of our children this was done to. So let's go over some key points in child age journey, and then I will share some more evidence with you, because there are those out there, disgraceful individuals who've claimed we make this up and abuse us relentlessly. We have been consistent on this from the beginning. This is our town, these are our children, and we will not sit by silently whilst you do this to them. This child was severely sexually assaulted at the age of 13 or 14. She was in year 9. What she was made to do, forced to perform oral sex on an older young man whilst it was recorded. The footage shared all over the place. The police knew about it. They checked the text exchange, which confirmed she was sexually assaulted. They did nothing. The school did nothing. The local authority designated officer did nothing. Social services did nothing. That school had governors on it. Governors that are senior councillors in this town. They all did nothing. They all did nothing. Andy Burnham claimed victims were being listened to in this. Andy Burnham claimed one of the reasons this review was not released before Christmas was because he cared about how victims felt. Yet he and his review team, they cared nothing at all about this young woman, and what happened to this young woman was identical to what happened to all the other young women. They were people, these people just turned up and dropped off letters. The council, those in the council are laughing at us. I heard on Friday, they're laughing at us, claiming they're all talk and no one will turn up to this council meeting on Monday. None of you will turn up, or a handful of old grannies will turn up. They were mocking us, they're laughing at us. I am walking there tomorrow, and if I turn up on my own, I'm done with this. If I turn up on my own after you've heard this, I'm done with this. I'm done with every one of you if I turn up on my own after this. If you're healthy enough, you should be there tomorrow. This could have been your daughter. It could have been your niece. It could have been your grandchild. It could have been someone who lives next door to you. The mayor, the Greater Manchester mayor, has intentionally misled us. Forget for a moment that this review is a complete cover-up exercise. He has misled these young people. That girl, this child was failed at 14 in a school in our town. Yes, Gary, and we are the evil ones. Does it look like I'm making this shit up? She tried to commit suicide after she was raped by the 19-year-old outside a mill. She walked out of school. The school would have known where she went. This 19-year-old groomed her. This 19-year-old groomed her. Pakistani guy, she said so herself, raped her. She tried to commit suicide. Social services told her, bugger off, come back and tell us your story when you've not tried to commit suicide, when you've calmed down a bit. A 14-year-old child is raped and social services tell her to come back. She walks out of school. She ends up, and she's a bit vague with it, and you can understand why, because it's difficult for this child. She ends up in a care home. That's what she means by a residential centre. She ends up in a care home. Men come to visit her, hand in their IDs, go to her bedroom and rape her. Men come to visit her, hand in their IDs, show their identification, go to her room one after the other and rape her. That residential home is still open to this day. That secondary school is still open to this day. Then some idiot decides to put her in semi-independent housing, probably to save some money. She's just a white working class kid. Who cares? Throw her out on the street, semi-independent living. Consultant B, remember, in that review, says progress has been made, so off she goes. Failed. Why is her testimony not in that document, Andy Burnham? The people of my town want to know, and yes, to those who mock me, I will speak on behalf of the people of my town on this. We want to know why her case and the 10 others are not in this review document. Why have their testimonies been withheld? Why did you not even take their testimonies, Burnham? Why did your review team not take their testimonies? You can see, this is the letter, 7th of June 2022, Greater Manchester Police. We are contacting you to let you know there has been a review into how Oldham Council and Greater Manchester Police dealt with sexual exploitation of children between 2006 and 2012. The findings of this review are going to be made available on the Greater Manchester Mayor's Office website soon, where it can be seen by members of the public and the media. We are writing to you to let you know that your name is not in the report, but it does talk about your experiences, which you may find distressing. We know some police investigations carried out at the time were not good enough, and we are sorry for any harm you suffered. They are sorry for any harm. Any. As if there's any doubt to the harm she suffered. We are now going to work with Oldham Council to have another look at your case. So the Bent Police are going to look with the Bent Council to have another look at our case, yeah? If we think we can, we will investigate crimes that were committed against you and track down any possible offenders. All you've got to do is go and look at the sign-in books at the care home. Police officers would like to speak to you about what happened to you, as if this child, this young woman, has any trust left. You can choose when and where you talk to a police officer, and they will do all they can to support you. Does anyone believe that? Does anyone believe that off a letter like this? We know talking about what happened in the past may be upsetting. May, not will be upsetting, may be upsetting. You do not have to do this if you do not want to. Of course you don't want to, do you, Greater Manchester Police? We want to do our very best to support you. I don't believe them. Do you believe them? The people delivering this letter will tell you how you can speak to a specialist detective and access help and support. Yeah, someone, she tried to. They offered someone to speak to her over the phone. You can also speak to the police by calling 0161 blah blah blah. Oh yeah, I'm going to phone them up, am I? And say I was groomed and gang raped. Who can I speak to, please? There's not even a named person on there. Get help and support from St. Mary's Sexual Assault Referral Centre. Oh, a bit late now. The best one, call the Samaritans. You can call the Samaritans. Call Oldham Multi-Agency Safeguarding Hub, who repeatedly failed her. We know you are likely to have suffered. Not you have suffered, you are likely to have suffered. And apparently this went from the new policeman in charge. This review is a cover-up. This victim believes this review is a cover-up. Other victims believe this review is a cover-up. Maggie Oliver believes this review is a cover-up. I maintain to this day that it is a cover-up to protect politicians in this town. I'm going to read you Child A's response. She's written this herself. It's absolutely nothing to do with me. She shared it with me. She wrote this letter to Andy Burnham. Please bear with me. I am writing to you today with regards to the review which has just been posted. I have tried on several occasions to try and contact you prior to the release, but failing to get a response or being passed on to someone else. The original review has been postponed due to different reasons, one being, and I quote, essential victim and survivor testimony is to be heard in full. Bright girl, she's gone and got his quote. And I quote, essential victim and survivor testimony is to be heard in full. This is a letter to Andy Burnham, by the way. However, with first-hand knowledge, I know this to be untrue. I am one of the victims and have only been contacted 2 weeks prior to this review, not to be asked for my testimony or permission to be in the review, but to be made aware that my police files had been used to create an anecdote to address the failings of the agencies in question. Bringing up memories which have not been dealt with 12 years later without the real considerations of the effects this will have on the victims. This review has not only highlighted the failings to an extent, but also the past of which we struggle every day to live with. I am being exploited by the police and everyone involved in the review in the hope that this will correct the failures ignored for many years. The way in which the news was relayed was by sending an officer and support worker to come and deliver the message with a pitiful letter, but still no apologies or admission of failing. In doing this, you have caused me many problems for me mentally, physically, psychologically and emotionally. I fear that when this review is released, it will put myself and my family at risk if my identity was to be found. The police reopening my case files could cause the perpetrators of the abuse to seek me out, alongside the abusers who are still living here. A move, blah, blah, blah. Sorry, I'm just reading this. living in constant fear of bumping into one of the abusers when trying to continue a normal life, considering the hurdles I have and still continue to face, is extremely stressful. Consideration of the victims wasn't an important factor in the report, as no background mental health or well-being checks were performed before the meeting was conducted. I myself am still struggling to deal with the past, using medication as a remedy, also with counselling received to the present, something which would have been known prior to the meeting if the correct procedures were taken when obtaining my personal details. I never had a normal teenage life like most girls, and with the review being made public, it is creating problems for me now 12 years later. The repercussions of me finding out about the review and my involvement has meant my mental health has deteriorated in withdrawn feeling like I did in 2010. Although support workers have been providing, the safety of the survivors hasn't been thought out during the whole process of this review. In the extract written about me, there is no mention of the failings of the police, social services, Bernardos or messengers. It paints the picture of a troubled girl who continued to make bad choices one after another, not the real image of a young child being manipulated, abused and neglected by the people who are there to protect children and keep them safe. Being labelled as a troubled child, questioned for names, license plate numbers and addresses rather than looking into the well-being of a child. The past is something I can never escape from. It is something which impacts my life in many ways still to this day. Over 12 years I have dealt with this in many different ways and have learnt to try and move on for myself and my child. This has been with great difficulty. Some things you never really heal from, and having my experience been exposed for the public, even if made anonymous, hasn't achieved the desired result in the agencies taking responsibility, but has caused many problems for the survivors of this abuse. In January, bright girl, in January, a statement was released. Following responses to those letters, the independent review team have reported that some individuals feel they have not had the opportunity to say everything they want to say. This is false information, as the survivors of the abuse weren't informed of their participation until the 7th of June 2022. She has evidenced Andy Burnham as a liar. She has evidenced the man who wants to be Prime Minister as a liar and someone who has failed our children, and not just failed our children, I would say someone who has participated in the cover-up of the grooming and gang rape of our town's children. This is false information, as the survivors of the abuse weren't informed of their participation until the 7th of June 2022 without taking our testimonies. I believe the review to be biased, still not addressing the ongoing problems with the agencies involved, but just an acknowledgement that mistakes were made. I have many questions which I need answers to so I can gain a better understanding of the process of how the review has been forced, how the survivors of this abuse voices has been taken into consideration, and the effects the review will have on us. I find it disgusting that this information has taken many people a long time to collect and collaborate, and without the victims once being taken into account. This review has not had the desired outcome, as the agencies have not taken accountability. They have just outlined what the failures were. I would like to hear back from you personally by email and phone. I have a lot of questions and the people I've met so far are unable to answer them. Andy Burnham is dancing in Glastonbury. I checked his Twitter. Andy Burnham is dancing in Glastonbury, listening to Paul McCartney. This child, this young woman, has been repeatedly trying to contact his office. Burnham promised victims would be heard. He led you and I to believe victims would be heard. And that the delay was because They wanted to make sure victims were heard. Andy Burnham wants to be Prime Minister. The metropolitan elite who abuse us and call us far right and racist, they don't care about white working class girls like this. They're a price worth paying. Not for me. Everything I, you, every one of you have endured, multiply it by 100. And it pales into insignificance as to what this young lady and others like her have endured. This is why we do this. This is why we will not be silenced. If you are finding value in this transmission, and let's face it, let's be honest here. This child, this young woman's story would never have got out if it wasn't for this. If we weren't able to speak for ourselves like we do, using this platform, using these transmissions, reading my articles, responding to what I do, have done for the last 4 years, this would not happen. We would not be here. If you find value in these transmissions, please like the transmissions. Please copy the effing link and put it on your Facebook pages, put it on your Twitter pages. I know some of you like doing this. I don't care. I've never said anything. Copy the interview. Cut me out of it. I don't care. Cut me out of it and share it. It's not me. It's this lady. It's this young woman's voice. In fact, send me a bloody message and I'll send you. In fact, I'll put up on my webpage at some point tonight, I'll put up the interview to be downloaded. I've even transcribed it. Word for word, I've even transcribed it. It took me bloody hours, but I've even transcribed it. And that's the point, isn't it, my friend? That is the point. I was sat 10 yards from him. November, December time. And then that statement also came out. This young woman went and did the work herself. Those aren't my words. She sent me that. I'm chuffed to bits with her. I'm chuffed a bit with how the people of my town are being educated and are educating themselves. They can call it incitement if they want. I don't. I call it education. I am chuffed to bits that the people of my town, more and more, are being able to do this. These transmissions are only possible with your financial support. £75 a week it is the equivalent of. On the webpage, the link's there somewhere. You'll find it. Or you can just buy me a coffee. Some also have changed it to. Without this platform, we would be nowhere. Without this set of skills, the bandwagon would have moved on. And Jim McMahon, on his parliamentary debate, he's got a motion or a debate in Parliament in a side room on Thursday morning. He would be standing up and saying, his name is cleared. It's nothing to do with politics. I need arresting again. And you all need to move on. The school allowed this child to return sexually assaulted, horrific sexual assault, video footage shared in the school. What do you think was going to happen to this child? The police knew, the school knew, the council knew, councillors in this town knew. Serving councillors in this town knew. I know your names. I'm not going to share your names here in this way because it'll identify this young woman and she's asked me not to. That's why I'm not naming the school, because she's asked me not to. That's why I'm not naming the care home, because she's asked me not to, because she's scared. And even though she's scared, she's done this. Even though she's scared, she's done this. This is courage. My friend Gary Tarbuck is walking from his house. At some point, I'm going to get to near Waterhead Academy and meet him there. And I'm going to walk with him from there to the Annie Kenny statue. And then we're going to carry on to the Civic Centre. We are not violent people. We are not there to endorse violence. We're not there to support violence. We're not even there to disrupt. We are there to witness. We are there to witness what Amanda Chadderton and her council are prepared to do. We already know what Harry Caffrell wants to do and Amanda Chadderton want to do. They want to cover this up and move on. There is no moving on until we have got justice. And the only way we are going to get justice is by Andy Burnham apologising to the people of this town for the sham of his investigation, or I will continue and continue and continue. There's 200 pages in that, and believe me, I have every amount of rage inside of me to rip apart every one of those 200 pages, and I sure as hell have the skills to do that. I will destroy the careers of Newsam and Ridgway. In fact, their careers are already destroyed. It is that, Karen. It is that. Andy Burnham is neck-this in this. He's complicit in this. He launched a review. He stood up and spoke at the beginning, and he thanked Arood Shah and he thanked Sean Fielding. This child's harrowing experience to 4 minute lines, glossing over everything, not given an opportunity. None of them were. None of them were. Harry Caffrell, the Borough Chief Executive, along with the support of Elizabeth Drogan, Head of Constitutional Services, Paul Entwistle, the Borough Solicitor, with Amanda Chadderton, Howard Sykes, the Lib Dem leader, and Graham Sheldon, the Conservative leader, have made it so that you will be prevented from asking questions. Your questions will be selectively read out. And pre-prepared answers, nonsense, will be read from scripted pieces of paper. And all the time, sat in that council chamber will be councillors who knew Shabir Ahmed worked for the council, councillors who helped protect Shabir Ahmed whilst he worked for the council, and councillors who covered up that Shabir Ahmed worked for the council. They will be sat in that room. For those of you who are joining me and are unaware of who this ranting Asian man is, my name is Raja Mir. I do indeed have an MBE. I was awarded it when I was 29 years old. I have a 25-year career in safeguarding communities. I came back to Oldham 3 years ago, just over 3 years ago, to tend to my terminally ill mother. I was handed a dossier of information involving the cover-up of the grooming and gang rape of our town's children. And I refuse to be intimidated. I refuse to turn my back on the children of my town. And the consequence of that is Greater Manchester Police have a dossier on me. Oldham Council have mobsters affiliated with them. I've spent time in police cells. I've been in courts. I still have a trial on the August the 15th to attend. I keep saying to Detective Inspector Kenny Blaine and Detective Sergeant Christopher Dean and the CPS, put me in prison. Do you think I care? Do you think I care? It's a price I will pay a multitude of times. My town, my children, and I will not sit by whilst you facilitate their grooming, their gang rape, and I maintain it is in exchange. It is in exchange for votes. It is in exchange for keeping the Asians sweet. Well, I'm sorry. I'm an Asian man, and you're not keeping me sweet with this bollocks. This is outrageous. Please put up words of support for Child A. I know she's listening. So please do that. I'll take a moment just to step back because I don't want to end the transmission. I want every one of you. The 130 I'm seeing on my screen now, I really need. I know there are, the usual council spies and whatnot, but ignore them. I want every one of you because she is the bravest young woman I have come across on this journey. So please, please share your support for her. Another victim has come forward. Another victim has just come forward. Live here on this transmission. I was contacted a week prior to the report being published to be told I would be in the report. I didn't even know all this was going on. So there you have it. Live on the transmission. Another victim has come forward. Agreed. Agreed, Charles. We will indeed, won't we, Gary? We know they're watching this, Gary. We know Amanda Chadderton is watching this. We know the Labour Party are watching this. We know the council's team of advisors are watching this. Bring it on. Bring it on. We're on the side of right, honesty, integrity, transparency. Those words you use, they're not for you. They're our words. Thank you, Pauline. She is an inspiration. I'll see you tomorrow, Nikki. I think you're coming, aren't you? Mate, the kid was crying. She had a baby with her. She was crying. And you know what hurt the most? It was so obvious where it could have been stopped. It was so obvious to me where it could have been stopped. Having spent my life working with children, it was so obvious when that thing happened to her, when she was sexually assaulted by a boy in her school, and the school knew and the police knew. That is where the intervention should have happened. The school knew. The counsellors knew. All the safeguarding agencies knew. The police knew. Social services knew. Thanks, Carl. We are behind her, aren't we, Denise? We are behind her. I've seen the Jane D comment. Jane D, you're more than welcome to reach out to me. I'm hesitant on all of this. I honestly am. Child A knows when she first contacted me, I asked her to take a deep breath, consider everything, and get back in touch with me when she was ready. But please, Jane D, drop me a messenger message. Sorry, just give me 1 second. I'll just type in my email right here, right now. And you've got it. Drop me a messenger or drop me an email on this. Yeah, thank you. This is what I wanted. Thank you. I want her to know how she's loved. It matters. It matters. Yes, exactly that. That's exactly what I thought of her, Phil. Yes, Steve. Start. Please, Jane, do get in touch. Thank you, David. They did, Gary, and school governors included serving Oldham councillors who are in that room tomorrow. Serving Oldham councillors who are in that room tomorrow. Sheila, I hope they don't. I know, yes, I'll deal with them, but I hope they don't. It's all gone wrong, hasn't it? It was a cover-up exercise from the beginning, and we've proven it's a cover-up exercise. We've proven, you know, it's a horror movie for me, because every democratic structure I believe in, every civic, you know, mechanism that exists in our country, I have championed my entire professional career, and they're tumbling down all around me. The police are crooked, the council are crooked, the MPs, the council leaders, the borough solicitor. They're all neck deep in this scandal. The chief executive, the newspapers. Of course it's okay. I'll see you there. Andy Burnham has been exposed. This is the man who wants to be the next Prime Minister. Andy Burnham, the Greater Manchester Mayor, has been called a liar by a victim of the Oldham child sex exploitation inquiry. Her testimony was never sought, it was never taken, and contrary to what Andy Burnham claimed, it appears that he, too, is also nothing other than a barefaced liar.
Do not fear them. Do not fear any of them.